What is the dumbest brand name that somehow worked out for itself? Story 1. Walkman is a classic case. I think the Sony execs initially wanted to call it Walkman, but the American marketers said, nope, that name make no sense, and it doesn't if you think about. And Janglish names never worked overseas, so they called in the Soundabout in the US, the Stowaway in the UK, the Freestyle in Australia. But foreigners would come to Japan and buy the Walkman without hesitation. The Japanese exec said, screw this, and renamed it Walkman Worldwide. And it worked. Story 2. I don't know that it worked out, but changing Twitter to X is one of the dumbest brand name changes I've ever seen. There's a good reason everyone still calls it Twitter. And what are you supposed to call tweets now, X's? So dumb. The best part is learning that Elon tried to name PayPal X back in the day and got unanimously voted down by the board. And he has 2 kids with X in their name. It's such a strange obsession. Story 3. Been wanting to say this for 2 reasons. Firstly, because they are really outstanding and have been my new favorite online vendor for my meds. Secondly, I promised that if they were legitimate, I would leave them a well-detailed review. I recently ordered from them on Tuesday, and I received it the very next day. I was amazed by the quality of the cannabis and Xanax, alongside the really quick shipping, which is still astounding, and the availability of a wide range of other medicinal items. They employed UPS as the shipping company, and I paid for an overnight delivery. EMAIL Flacapharma GMAILCOM TELEGRAM FLAKKAPHARMAA UHATSAPP +1 408 668 4,319. I have had nothing but great experiences with them and overall. They outperform dispensaries in terms of pricing, shipment speed, and customer service. They absolutely deserve it, and I promised I would, which is why I took the time to write this review. I heartily recommend them and will undoubtedly continue to be a part of them. They also ship internationally to a wide range of nations, including the United States, United Kingdom, Europe, Canada, Saudi Arabia, Australia, and many more. Story 4. I remember when Twitter came into being. I honestly thought that was the dumbest name for a pretentious public messenger imaginable. Who in their right mind would ever publicly admit to have tweeted? Man, I miss being so clueless and full of hope and innocent prejudice. Story 5. Trojan. The Trojan horse looked like it would be safe to let inside the city, but once it was in there, it broke open and a million little soldiers spilled out to wreak havoc. Not the message we want for your condoms. Story 6. There's this finance company in Sweden that used to be named Factab, until they realized that when dealing with international affairs, their name sounded like fucked up. So they changed their name to PayX, and is now simply referred to as PaySex by the common folk. Whilst unintentionally funny, the name changes and memes about it gave them a hella lot of attention and really helped spread their company. Story 7. I'm from the 80s. There was an appetite suppressant called AIDS that had commercials saying, "Wanna lose weight? Try AIDS and see the weight melt off," is something similar. Watch the vintage commercials on YouTube. Pretty funny now in the rearview mirror. Killed the brand. Story 8. Gomez. They were playing their first gig at a pub and had no band name. A friend was coming and didn't know the address. Her name was Gomez. Someone wrote her name on a little sign and put it out the front of the pub so she could find them. Everyone who came that night thought the band was called Gomez. They just went with it. Story 9. Godaddy, like WTF? My company was trying around with a domain that only Namecheap had. They didn't want to buy it from Namecheap because Namecheap sounds unprofessional. But yeah, let's buy a domain from GoFuckingDaddy. Story 10. There's a brand that I think is only in Canada called No Name. Everything of the No Name brand is packaged in the same bright yellow color and is labeled very matter-of-factly. Their merch, you read that right, merch, is named with the same bluntness to a comedic degree. It's just very funny in a very Canadian way. People legit follow their social media accounts just for the humor. Best marketing idea that looks so terrible on paper. Story 11. I remember Oracle bought a company called Acme Packet, shortened to Acme, in the 2000s. Who the fuck names their company Acme? Did the person live in a cave and never saw a Roadrunner cartoon? Story 12. TNA. I thought everyone knew what that stood for. I didn't think women would wear it all over, Moose knuckle jackets. Every time I see a 50-year-old woman in one, I feel like asking her if she knows what it means. Story 13. ShamWow. Makes me think of that scene in Gravity Falls where Grunkle Stan talks about his failed product ideas. He has one called the Sham Total that ended up staining everyone's clothes from the cheap dye he used. Story 14. Can't believe no one has mentioned fashion brands FQK and Paul Frank. The former just used really bad puns and latter just sticks a monkey face on all their products. Neither have any unique designs or styling at all, but somehow both were extremely successful in the 2000s. Story 15. There's a clothing boutique in NYC where the brand name is literally the Pretty Little Liars iconic shh logo that Lucy Hale does. I don't know how the heck they got away with it. Maybe because they only served local customers and no one ratted them out. They lasted a good 7 years. Story 16. I recently found out Lululemon's founded named it that because he thought it would be funny to hear Asian people try to pronounce it. Otherwise, I'm a big fan of Double or Muffin, a muffin store where you pay for a muffin and they flip a coin and you either get 2 muffins or no muffin. Story 17. Huel represents the vomiting noise that anyone who actually tried the stuff makes, if they have any powers of discrimination whatever. They still seem to exist, though. Story 18. There's a company here that teaches kids English and maths. It was called Kumon Kids, but I guess somebody finally realized that was a bad idea, so it's now just Kumon. Seems to be working out well for them. Story 19. Honorable mention for a brand that didn't work out. There used to be a Vietnamese restaurant in Lincoln, Nebraska called Vain Dong. Still surprised no one told the owner that's among the least appetizing restaurant names ever. Story 20. In South Africa, we have a popular Christian bookstore chain. I shit you not, it's called Kiem Books. Kiem is the abbreviation for Christelijk Uitgeversmaatskappij in Afrikaans and English. It's Christian publishing company. Story 21. When I was in college in the 90s, there was a litter box where the tray was made of several trays with alternating holes. The idea was to take the top tray off, let the yuan clumped litter fall through into the other, still stacked together and covering the holes. You dump the clumped and solid contents in the trash, and then put that tray on the bottom of the other trays, etc. They called it the catch it. Say it fast, catch shit. Story 22. Dress Barn. A women's clothing store that originally opened in 1962, made by a woman for working women. The name comes from the first store, which was shaped like a barn. So the company's name is the most boring, unimaginable name. That's also kind of horrifying because it conjures up images of cows and horses wearing dresses. But the company survived for 61 years and 650 stores before they ultimately filed for bankruptcy in 2023. That ridiculous name actually worked because they really keyed in on what middle-aged women wanted out of clothing. At one point, they had even contemplated changing their name and were set to convert some of their stores to test it out, but ultimately decided against it. They ultimately felt they'd lose their loyal customer base. They did a hard 180 and decided to lean into the name and even did a huge campaign with models photographed with farm animals. It's a dumb AF name, but that shit actually worked for them. Story 23. A school I worked at had an entrepreneur business week where the kids had to develop, market, and sell a product at a markets. A group of my students were selling donuts on a plate with ice cream in the middle. For several glorious hours, they managed to put signs up advertising glory holes, and I've never been so goddamn proud. Story 24. Bum equipment. I remember that shit in the 90s, kids walking around with the word bum plastered across their ass as if they forgot what that body part was called and had their mom label it for them. Story 25. Not a brand, but a product. The iPad. When it came out, I thought how ridiculous it was to imagine people talking about their pads in casual conversation and that the name wouldn't stick. Yet iPads are holding on strong. Story 26. In the UK, we have Boots. No footwear, just pharmaceuticals. Office. Clothing. Not sure if it's still going. Not actually work. Curries. All things electrical. No food, unfortunately. I'm sure there's many more. Not great if you're coming to the UK for the first time. You might be very confused. Story 27. Well, in Germany we have this treat. It's marshmallows on a little wafer cookie coated in chocolate. There's a very specific name for these, and while now they changed the name for it to Schokokuss or Schaumkuss, which means chocolate kiss and fluffy kiss respectively. They were named Negerkuss or sometimes Mohrenkopf, which much means N-word kiss. Except the N-word is just written out, just straight up on the package in stores. Kinda weird now. Growing up, these was perfectly normal. Story 28. Everyone here giving examples of brand names with actual words that's silly, dumb, or whatever. Others were people's family names or acronyms. But the king has to be Google. It's not a word. It was never a word. The success of the business had it added to the Oxford English Dictionary on June 15, 2006. That doesn't happen often. Yahoo, Bing, DuckDuckGo, etc. are all actual English words. Fun fact, Google was based on the word Google, so Google originally meant 1010. Story 29. Some of the best brand names would not have made it past modern focus groups. Chevrolet, name, Toshiba, Tokyo Shibara, Toyota, variant on family name, etc. Best brand names are shorter and easier to remember. Ford, Honda, Apple, etc. I continue to be amazed at the success of the names that are really heard to pronounced like Hyundai. Story 30. Soylent. It's a meal shake company. The first time I heard it, I was like, they have no PR team? No one told them? Is this just an unfortunate language translation issue? Nope, they knew what they were doing. They were just trying to create controversy for advertising's sake. Great shake, though. Story 31. When I cruise by, I buy Power PCs in Costco or Best Buy. I always thought that name was so cringe. Reminds me of something the Power Glove dude from The Wizard would buy. Story 32. Cannibal Burgers. The California burger joint was supposed to be called Carnivore Burgers, but the owner was too stupid to know the difference. It's not like they put humans in their meat patties or anything. Just horse and monkey meat when they can't source medium-grade cattle. Story 33. AIDS, the candy that was supposed to make people lose weight, but it came out just before the massive AIDS crisis in the 80s, and the company did well until AIDS. Story 34. There's a chain of stores on the East Coast called Ocean State Job Lot. And I don't know. I think that's one of the stupidest names I've ever heard. Job lot technically means miscellaneous assortment of items. And they do sell random stuff they get super cheap from various places, but it sounds dumb IMO. Story 35 Poo-Pourri, or however you spell it. On a side note, I went into the restroom at work last week and said out loud, "Oh wow, I love that air freshener." Like, it smelled like the best Christmas store in the world. Then my coworker said, from an occupied stall, "Oh sorry, I sprayed too much poo-pourri." So there's that, guess it works. Story 36, Smeg. I can only assume it doesn't have the same connotations in whatever Nordic country it originated from, but I cannot help but laugh, be slightly grossed out every time I see the name. Thing is, I absolutely love most of their products, and could I afford them, would have them all over my house. Silly name. To me, aside, they make genuinely beautiful appliances. Story 37, there's legit a brand of appliances called Smeg. If you're British, try not to laugh your ass off. The best part is there's a toaster that is made by Smeg, which is extra hilarious if you're a fan of Red Dwarf. Story 38, Crocs. Don't come at me, I have a pair myself, but they are ridiculous looking even if useful, comfortable. Also, apparently they were used by the costume department on the set of Idiocracy because they thought they would be a good fit for the idiot population in the movie. Story 39, Twitter. At the time, I couldn't believe anyone would give their app such a silly name. Now I can't believe some jackass bought one of the most famous brand names in the world and changed it to something way sillier that no one uses. Story 40. There is a big German furniture store chain called Xlutz. It's a combination super large size, XXXL, and the German surname Lutz, one of the names of the founders. But it is really unfortunate in my opinion. Story 41. Moose Knuckles. They make great Canadian winter coats. They are very popular, but the name and logo tell a different story. Moose Knuckles are not found on their feet, by the way. You got to look a little higher up to find them. Story 42, Tough Sheet. They've just also purchased the naming rights to the Tough Sheet Stadium, where Bolton Wanderers Football Club play in England. They make tough sheets for the building trade. Story 43, Trojan. It makes me think of giving a wrapped penis as a gift, so you can sneak it in and release all the soldiers later. Kind of the opposite of what you want the product to do. Story 44. These guess watches reminds me that there used to be a racehorse in my country, New Zealand, called Guess Who. He was surprisingly successful, and the race calling was hilarious. Guess who overtakes XYZ? Guess who's coming down the back straight? Guess who won? Or GW came second, etc. I'm surprised the authorities handling names allowed this name. Story 45. Big ass fans. Honestly, probably not a surprise, just a description that stuck. Also, fun to say at work where we weren't cursing but using a brand name in front of guests. Story 46. Do y'all remember the Guess Outlet store in the mall? That was our internet. The mall. Not much has changed if you think about it. Just more of everything. The good, bad, and super, super ugly. But no arcades. Not like they used to grow. Yeah, I'm old as fuck. Story 47. Not a product brand in the traditional sense, but It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia was a name that the creators originally hated. Now it's the longest-running live sitcom of all time. Story 48. In BC, we have white spot restaurants everywhere. I love it. Odd name for a restaurant. It represents white plates on a table, but could mean something else to some. Story 49. I was just looking at some industrial-size fans made by big-ass fans. Maybe not that dumb a name as it is memorable and descriptive, but kind of a weird brand name. From what I hear, big-ass fans makes a decent big-ass fan, so that probably helps. Story 50. I thought of another good one. Ski-Doo. Originally branded as Ski Dog, but the paper that the name was written for the marketing people to come up with branding for was cut off on the bottom of the page, and they made a bunch of marketing with Ski-Doo on it, so they just went for it. Story 51, Poor. A brand in Germany called Fakir Hausgerat wanted to enter into Turkish market with the name Fakir, which basically means poor person in Turkish. Still operating since 1933, though I would pick a different name. Story 52. I've always thought CVS Pharmacy was the worst imaginable name. The CVS stands for Customer, Value, Service. There are apparently some CVSs that have a different slash for different things. It reads like a bit of computer code. I find it embarrassingly bad, but the company seems to do just fine without my approval. Story 53. Untuck It is actually kind of genius for marketing their shirts as untuckable when there are already shirts like these. Usually the shirts labeled with neck and sleeve sizes, 15x32, 16x34, etc., are dress shirts meant to be tucked in, and just about every other collared shirt labeled by general sizes, small, medium, large, etc., are ready to be worn untucked. They just made it even easier for those who never noticed the difference, and it's worked out well for them. Story 54. In Japan, there's a fancy women's clothing company called Titty & Co. https://tittyandco, net/, and a kids' clothing place called Starvations. Also not a big brand, but there was a bar near me called Rape, and a brewery called Jap Brewery, just so I don't get in trouble because people might think I'm using a slur as a joke. https://Jap Brewery, jp/. Story 55. There's a company that makes stationery called Rapesco. When I was in college, everyone bought it to show their friends and laugh about the name, then kept buying it because it's pretty good stationery. Story 56. Beats by Dre. They have always been a cheap company. They have been caught putting weights in their tech to make it heavier and have just shitty quality overall. I've bought 3 headphones from them, 2 pairs of earbuds and 1 full headset, and they all broke around 3 months after getting from basic daily use. I bought Sony headphones for $180 and they have been going strong for 8 months. Story 57. I don't know how well it has worked out for them, but the name Fracture for a company that prints pictures on glass has to be the most idiotic name ever invented. Sure, let's remind people of the Achilles heel of glass. Makes sense to me? It reminds me of the old expression that it is the destiny of glass to break. Story 58, Starbucks. It's baffling how we've allowed ourselves to be manipulated into thinking that their vaguely coffee-flavored sugar is something we not only need, but enjoy. Story 59. Not sure if this is international bit, there's a clothing store in Montreal called ISIS. For the longest time, I had no idea it was a clothing store, and just assumed the Canadian Gov was tolerating a recruitment center in the open. Turns out they were just tolerating overpriced, pretentious fashion. Story 60. There's a fashion brand in Australia called Selfie Leslie. It's a terrible name, made worse because their billboard ads are women dressed in barely anything clothes, looking vain and vapid. The name Selfie Leslie basically means peak narcissism, aka it's all about me because I'm the main character. Story 61. In my country, Malaysia, there was this e-hailing service for a shuttle bus made by the local state assemblyman. His intentions were good. The area was a business district, and oftentimes people had to park their cars very far away and walk, since it was so packed. In an effort to mitigate this, there's a van that goes round the area, and you can use the app to pick you up for about 30 US cents. Now he probably thought, it's like a carpool and everyone is gathering inside the car. There's a Malay word for gather, and that's kumpul, but that's too plain looking. Let me jazz up the spelling a bit. So guess what he named it? Freaking kumpul. No excuses. He can speak English just fine. Most inner-city Malaysians can, and have no problem holding a conversation with native English speakers. Just look at our Malaysia. Idiot.